All right, looks like we got folks coming in. Good morning or good afternoon, depending where you're at. Different time zones across the U.S. here. So welcome. My name is Taylor Termatozzi, and we've got Brandon Gill on the line as well. And we're going to give it about 2-3 more minutes here for a few folks to jump in, and then we'll kick off. I'm going to test the chat out real quick. Okay, and Brandon, can you confirm we are recording, sir?
I can. We are recording the session, so we'll make sure to send it out to all attendees post-session for anybody who would like it. And I think we'll also post it on our YouTube channel as well for anyone that might miss it.
Perfect. Okay, let's go ahead and kick over to the agenda side. I see we're reaching the number that have registered, so let's do it. All right, everyone, let's take a look at what we are covering today in our advanced features webinar. We'll talk about who we are here on our next slide, but we'll run through some targeted topics that our admins should be very interested in. We're going to pull out some information from our customers, talk about some trends that we've seen in the second half of 2023, and provide a few use case demonstrations. And then Brandon's going to take us away with some demonstrations in the product, actually. So a little show and tell today. All right, so I'm over here on the right-hand side. My name is Taylor Termatozzi, and I am the Director of Customer Success here at TrackVia. I've been with the company for just over 7.5 years and been across several of different departments.
Awesome. And Brandon Gill here. I'll cover off on the demo a little bit later. I run our sales strategy and solutions consulting team. So if any of you have purchased TrackVia in the last few years, you may have heard from me giving you the initial demo before it passed over to Taylor's team. So hopefully we've got enough knowledge between the two of us to be able to answer any questions that you might have throughout any of this.
Excellent. And just realized my video is not turned on, so there we go. Hi, Brandon. I could see you. You could see me. Hopefully, everyone else can see us as well.
There we go.
Cool. 5 more people have jumped in since we started, but no worries, everyone. You are not late. We're just getting kicked off here. Looking at some topics that we are covering. These are our Workato integrations, our public web forms, and we'll sprinkle in a survey here for a little interaction with you all. We're going to talk about SSO and then save some time at the end for our app script corner. Then we'll turn it to Brandon.
Awesome.
Alrighty. So what we've done historically is looked at all of our customers using Workato. What are some trends in the connection types? They're connectors, as Workato calls them specifically. On the left-hand side, I've highlighted a few of those logos, and these are, like I said, all from customer use cases. Though the one I hadn't heard previously, but is trending now, is Gov Deals, and this use case is pretty fun. Basically, one of our customers has a bunch of items that they have to sell, and they sell them to the general public. They are a university, so they have some requirements that they have to have a lot of not eBay type of compliance. Higher than that, they have to be able to track who they're selling to and what it was, and kind of the ebbs and flows of what they're selling. But they can use TrackVia to say post online to this website. That item and its images get uploaded to a site, and it allows a bidding war to take place. Comes with all the images, and when something is sold, pulls it offline from multiple resources. Outlook.com, the main use cases we've seen out of this is just generating emails or creating calendar events, and also just receiving emails. If you don't have someone physically monitoring an email box, let Workato do it for you. It comes in, reads the subject line, reads the content, and it can divert to certain team members based on parameters that you give it. FormStack, this connection has taken the pain out of creating documents using TrackVia and FormStack. So right now, the process to customize your documents isn't very fun, in that if you add additional fields to it, you have to go through the process again to set it up from scratch generally, and it's certainly a pain point. Workato has fixed this for us by giving you a recipe, and in the layout, when there's new fields added to your template, it gives you a new placeholder to drop a field from TrackVia into exact location. So streamlines that. Highly recommend using Workato to populate your documents. And our implementation team forced me to include this files tool by Workato. Workato actually has a lot of their own connectors that they are putting into their ecosystem to fill in gaps, or certain customizations that they've seen people write through the HTTP connectors that are kind of shown off to the right here. Files, this allows you to do things with images, pull files, move files, transpose them, and even some ETL built in with it. So, well, I think our use case actually today shows off one of those, but certainly search in your Workato recipes, just the word Workato on the connectors, and you'll see that there's about 25 of them of all different use cases and parsers and JSON injections you can use. And Oracle, the last one here, what some people are starting to use TrackVia for is to remove additional systems in the procurement lifecycle. So if you've used TrackVia for your supply chain, you purchase materials, they're delivered, you sign for them. And what it used to happen is you have this finalized version, and your accounting team or accounts payable sees a list of purchase orders in TrackVia, swivel chairs over to their payment system, and places payment to those vendors when their terms are due. Now that swivel chair exercise can actually be done utilizing an Oracle connection in Workato. When something is closed, received, whatever status it may be, push that information back into Oracle and automate that just last mile and alleviate the task from your accounts payables team. And yeah, I think that's it, Brandon. Cool. So let's take a quick survey, and then I'll explain what we're going to show off here. All right, everyone, polls up.
We'll let this run for about another 10 seconds or so. This is just asking if anyone's gotten a chance to use the new public web forms feature yet. And looks like I put a typo in there. Now means no. That's that's my mistake there, but I think everybody can make that jump. Awesome. We'll give it another couple seconds and we'll go ahead and close this poll here.
Cool. We are through. Do you immediately get the results of that?
Yep, I got the answers here. It looks like from the folks that answered, we had a majority of our attendees answer. I think we got about 25 responses. 53% said yes, 47% said no, or now. So good to see that we're getting some good usage out of public web forms.
Excellent. Yeah, so one thing that I've heard through the woodwork here working with customers is hey, we saw this in the beta format, there were some shortcomings, we're not quite ready to use it, or we just haven't had the time to. And the tip here that I want to show off is there are the use of dependent drop downs, right? If you're going to give this information to the public, you want to put some blinders on them, some boundaries where they can't just give you crap data. And dependent dropdowns is a feature that obviously is used in our forms, right? Limiting the information based off of previous inputs. That made it into the original version that we published for public web forms. And Brandon, if you put in yeah, go ahead. So on the left, there's two job types, or excuse me, departments, and on the right, there's job types. The job types are without a department is quite large, and if we limit the department, that will narrow down my selections here. So you're probably aware of the feature, how it works in TrackVia, but I just want everyone to know this works in public web forms. Absolutely utilize this, minimize the the errors or misinformation that you can get from outside of your user base. And really an announcement here for the public web forms, right, is what the UI and the UX that exist in the public web forms, that is going to be rolled out for our users inside of TrackVia. So the form look, when I sign in, the forms is going to be updated to the prettier UX version. And that's coming out this year for almost everyone except for a few customers. That'll be early January, but that's coming. We'll have release notes out and doing some publications as early as tomorrow. Okay, so with public web forms, there's so many use cases, more than I really had ever imagined when we were first talking about how we want customers to use it, or what we would suggest it for. We use this even internally for an events use case. And this is borrowed from one of our customers, this specific workflow, but in its simplest form, hello everyone, we have our annual holiday party coming out, right? This is a company email, please sign up, who you are, who's coming, do you have any dietary restrictions, whatever, right? So you can email that out to your team members or to your company, you get the results back, now you can know how many plates to expect at dinner. This goes a little further. For this customer, they needed the ability to send out the announcement, have someone RSVP, but then due to security or sort of a check-in process, they wanted an extra layer. I want every person that RSVP to come with a QR code on their phone, and I'm going to scan it for them when they get there, and that checks them in. Now, looking back, I can, one, make sure that it was employees only and you didn't, sneak your buddies in for a free plate. And also just, if I need to look back and see who's been in attendance years past, I have confirmation that they were physically there. So in this use case we're talking through, we're using our public web form. That's the announcement in the RSVP. That information gets pushed back into TrackVia. Workato is used in several steps here. And then we use the Workato email connection type as the response back to who's RSVP'd, because we're talking non-users as well as TrackVia users. And then the mobile device is the last piece to deliver the QR code when you arrive at the event. All right, so what does this look like? Here's my holiday dinner, bringing my wife and kiddo with me, and here's an allergy that I don't have. On the right-hand side is a look inside of the Workato recipe that does this, right? So the new record added, that's using the public web form that adds immediately to my RSVP table. Then in Workato, the action is grab all the data from whatever was added in my RSVP, and then we do a custom HTTP call to the Google API, and that sends some unique information. I think it's primarily the record ID. Since we're using an auto counter, it's unique. That can create a unique barcode that only works for that individual that's RSVP'd. And then we upload that back into TrackVia. So there's a process here that I won't really talk about, but when you go to scan the QR code, it finds it from the stored images, and it's like a search based off of the stored images or the number actually that's in my RSVP list, and that's how those two correlate. And yeah, so I mean, just to wrap that one up, really, it's as complicated as you want it to be, but that's that final piece that I thought was just too good to not share. And for whatever other parallel use case you want, I think the custom QR codes is a great place to invest into. Our next customer story is an integration with the government website. And there's two versions of this. On this one, I'm just going to talk about, and then the one immediately after, we're going to show it a little behind the scenes action here. So when you see a government logo like you do on the right hand side, you immediately probably glaze over and just trust that there's going to be some pain points involved with interacting with the website. So this integration with FEMA, we originally were brought this problem by some of our customers in the financial services area, and they needed to look for homes that were in disaster areas that FEMA had mentioned something was coming, a hurricane, a tornado, whatever it may be. And they can see homes that haven't been purchased or financed or whatever yet that they need to look into the insurance policies for. So when FEMA posts these things, you would think it just goes to this website and it kind of just dies there. But what you can do is when FEMA, you have to use Workato to do a pull request whatever interval that you deem necessary. It looks at the website, let's say every hour, and I can find events that are coming, inject that into a table. Let's say it, and with FEMA, it mentions states and counties. So if I can see what's coming to Texas, what counties will be affected, that adds a record in TrackVia, which runs a parallel process to see which loans do I have for these counties, and starts a workflow for someone to pick up the phone or email or whatever they may do from there. So the announcement of what's coming and the locations of it can be helpful for all of these use cases that I mentioned on the side. Maybe you're a roofing company and you travel the country for hail damage, or you just want to see what's affected in your state. Perfect use case for that. And the next use case is around the Office of People Management, which is a government branch that I have never heard of previously. But basically what's happening is my company operates out of a government building. Sometimes we show up and that government building is closed and all my employees just showed up. Very annoying. Certainly is. So on this, when we were brought this use case, we're like, whew, I don't know how to help. But we did some digging and we found that the OPM website has an API that's quite hidden, but it exists and it has an XML file type, which it's a weird thing to be happy about, but we got excited that we had something that was machine readable. So that's sort of the discovery process. Found the XML file. We can live with the nomenclature and structure of this data. Let's look at the next one, Brandon. Cool. So this files by Workato, as I queued up earlier, it will grab this file type, being an XML, and it pulls it down, looks at its encoding, and this I think runs every 5 minutes. So maybe more than necessary, but it certainly gets the job done and is just directed at this status page that we have mentioned here. Cool. So let me parse it. What does this mean? Make it human readable. Just grab the information that you want to, put it into pill format in Workato. And then the last thing that it does is once it grabs the information that it needs to, pump that into TrackVia, and it'll tell you the office building, who's affected, the employees, who should or should not show up. And then the last mile here is now we email all the individuals that are associated with that office. Hey guys, don't come into the office tomorrow. It's closed per the government's website. We'll be working from home. So instead of every single person going to that web page or emailing HR, Slacking, Teamsing them, boom, here you go. And yeah, use Workato email, so they're not even they don't have to be users of TrackVia to receive it, the information. All right, the next piece here, SSO. So I would never call this feature advanced. SSO is quite boring by most people's definition, but you know, when you start getting to this larger user size and TrackVia, you know, maybe you're above the couple hundreds or you're managing different subcontractors or people that come in and out of TrackVia more often than you care to clean up, right? That piece can be quite the burden. So with your SSO, what's great about it is you only have to set it up once, and when your IT team turns off a user's access via your Active Directory, it kicks them out of TrackVia, and you don't have to manage that, right? Maybe you can just get your users cleaned up on a quarterly basis without worrying about access controls. So some people, they have to do it. It's a no-brainer. For others, this time savings is necessary. I don't want to have to get an email every morning and see who to turn out of the system, and it's hyper manual. Don't like it. And if those of you who are not using it, if you would please, let's go ahead and fill up the chat here just for a few seconds. We'll compile the answers and share them afterwards, but I want to know, why are you not using SSO? I think that I'm gonna let that chat fill up. Please fill that out. Let's move on, Brandon. For sake of time, I want to give you enough time for your demo. Okay, so in our last session of advanced features, which is actually on this exact date last year, I talked about using TrackVia as a next level in your data lake. Take TrackVia, push it out to a data lake, schedule it, use different systems, use your Tableau, whatever. Power BI has become increasingly more popular with our customers for whatever reason that we've at least noticed this year. And we've gone through this setup with quite a few individuals so far. And I wanted to provide some recommendations to making this happen. The biggest problem that we see happening is when people go to set up Power BI in Workato, there's a setup process where you need to have someone with the correct permissions and auth types to set up Power BI. Obviously, it's a very well protected system, and if you don't have the permissions tweaked to what you need it to be, you're just going to hit a wall immediately and you can't do anything, and it's like really annoying, and people will abandon the project no matter how much time it saves them at your monthly or quarterly reporting sort of process and needs, like month end. So when you can set up time with us. We can help you out in the support queue, but have someone ready to be on the call with you or with us and get Power BI configured correctly off the bat. So you can add records to the right folders in Power BI. Then the second part is this scheduling. How often do you want it? Have it run automatically, remove that burden from yourself, and then make sure your error handling is set up properly. If this ever fails, if there's no data, if anything else in between happens, make sure that you've set yourself up to receive an alert or log it into a table in TrackVia to make it actionable. Obviously, when you're offloading a task and automating it, it's wonderful and you never have to look back. But what happens sometimes is a failure happened. This, connection was decommissioned because the person that set it up left the company, whatever. But build some safeguards in for yourself. Then on the left-hand side there below is the fields that need to be populated when you are setting up this connection. So FYI, you'll need that information as well. Okay, last slide here for me. All right, so in September 1st, I believe is the date this came out, and Groovy put out a release, right? And Groovy is the language that all of the app scripts in your account are written with. What I highly recommend doing, using your phone or just checking out the Groovy website after this, scan that QR code. It'll take you to the release notes of the current version of Groovy that TrackVia is utilizing. I've been through it. It's not the most interesting read you've ever seen, but it's important that as Groovy is releasing better features or cleaning up things, what should you be worried about breaking? What should new methods or classes that you can utilize, and just how to stay in front of that. So feel free to check that out. I believe we're also going to push some release notes around some recommendations into our help.trackvia.com site, and look forward to helping out with our app scripts. Okay, Brandon, did you get a chats coming through from your side?
I did. It looks like they came in through the questions section. So a couple of reasons why people did not use SSO. Seems like it's more noise and not particularly necessary for my user base. And another response was, we have 9,000 employees, but only 50 use TrackVia. Did not want to pay for that many employees, which seems fair enough.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think, when you think about SSO, I think those are some of the things ultimately to consider. How many people are going to be using it? How many people would you like to be using it? Maybe it does seem like more noise. Maybe it's easier for folks to get in, but if people have no problem getting into TrackVia normally, that's certainly an option. I think what we see is predominantly in IT heavy organizations where the whole company is on one SSO. That's really where people want to typically take advantage of something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. I would not advise to buy SSO just for the sake of using it for TrackVia, rather utilizing it if you already have it to circumvent the user add and user removal process.
Yep, definitely.
All right, Brandon, well, I'll hand it over to you, sir.
Awesome. Thank you, Taylor. All right, so what we're going to run through here quickly, we've got about 20 minutes left. I want to take everyone through a couple of examples of what Taylor just walked through. We'll go through public web forms a little bit. I know there was a question that came through about public web forms, so we'll answer that question along the way. We'll go through some Workato integrations as well. We'll take a look at what an app script can look like. We'll talk a little bit about FormStack as well, which is the PDF generator. And then we'll wrap up with some SSO and sandbox examples. And then we'll finish it off just with a couple of announcements that we've got as well. So To get us started, I'm going to mostly operate out of this TrackVia application here. This is a basic project management application. Now, what the application does doesn't really matter so much. I want to focus more on some of the features that we're going to have within this application. I want to start with public web forms. That's our newest sort of big feature release. We've already talked about it a little bit. You all have probably gotten some emails around it. We're very excited about this. So I want to talk just a little bit about how to utilize public web forms with a really simple example. Essentially, with public web forms, any form that you have within TrackVia that you want to make public for other people to have access to, for other people to fill in information for, you can do so. Taylor gave a couple of great examples with events. I can see this being used for work orders. If you've got assets and you want to assign a work order, you're in property management and you want to be able to say, hey, I want my people that live in my property to be able to have any, raise any issues up. I don't want them to use them in TrackVia. There's a lot of different use cases for public web forms. Basically, to create a public web form, we'll go to our forms dropdown. And you're going to see I've got one right here that's got this sort of globe next to it. That means it's a public web form. With any of these forms, if I go in and edit them, you're going to see that I have the option to make it publicly accessible. Once I flip that on, I can then go to the publicly accessible link. And from the publicly accessible link, there's a few ways that I can access this. From a QR code, I can create a QR code, as Taylor talked about, where people can scan it and have access to it. Or in my case, I'm just going to open it up in a new tab. Once I open it up in a new tab, I can now fill in this form however I want to. And then when I hit save, it will save into my TrackVia application. Now, one of the questions that came through when Taylor was first talking about it is a question around limitations for public web forms. There's going to be a handful of forms that you cannot make public, and there's really four main reasons why. So the reasons that you cannot make a form public is if there is a child view associated on that form, if there's a multi-select widget on that form, if there's a user group on that form, or if there's an application user field on that form. And all those things sort of make sense, right? Child views, generally speaking, if people are filling in information on a form, they don't need to see the child view underneath it. User groups and application fields, well, we're asking an outside user to fill it in. So having those fields on a form is going to limit it. And similarly with the multi-select widget. So if you are going through trying to make a form public and you're seeing that grayed out, it's likely one of those four things is on that form. What I've told people to do to this point is you can do a save as of that form, remove that application user field, remove that child view, whatever the case may be, and then you can make it public and all the data would still flow through to those child views or to those user fields or things like that. So those are just a couple of limitations that you will see with the public web form. Additionally, with public web forms, this is a first iteration. We are going to continue to improve on some of these. We've heard some feedback around being able to change the colors in the background, add some logos in there, make them a little more presentable. We're certainly working to enhance those as we continue to improve on that feature. All right. After that, we want to talk a little bit about Workato. So Taylor walked us through a few different examples of Workato and how folks are using it. Very powerful tool combined with TrackVia. And essentially, if you have Workato turned on within your account, if I go to my menu here, you'll be able to go to the integrations drop down. It'll say, take me to TrackVia integrations, and you'll be able to utilize Workato. TrackVia has an OEM partnership with Workato that allows us to resell Workato and have it tightly integrated with our system at a highly discounted rate to our customers. And so people can really take advantage of the Workato platform to connect into other systems. And it's the main way that we're seeing most people do integrations at this point. We've got about 40% of our customer base currently on Workato. If you're not on Workato right now and you want to learn more, happy to go through more detail about that. But by way of example, once we get into Workato, this is sort of what it looks like. So once we go through and we say, take me to TrackVia integrations, this is a bit what TrackVia or what Workato looks like. Workato is essentially going to be made up of two main components. You're going to have connectors and you're going to have recipes. A connector is essentially the system you want to connect into. Salesforce, Oracle, HTTP, GovDeals, whatever that connector is, that's your connector. And then a recipe is basically what you want that integration to do. When I add a record in TrackVia, I want to add a record in my ERP, in my accounting system, whatever the case may be. I've got a few different examples of recipes here. I'm going to go ahead and take a look at this one here, which is connecting TrackVia to Salesforce. When I click into that recipe, there's a few different tabs at the top that we'll go through quickly. The first is the recipe tab. This is just saying, what is my integration doing? This one's really straightforward. When I add a new record into TrackVia, it's going to create a contact object in Salesforce. If I were to stop this recipe and edit it, I could get into the actual details of it, and I can start to see, okay, what system am I connected into? I'm connected into TrackVia, and I can even go and figure out which instance of TrackVia am I connected into. Most of our customers only have one account, but there's some customers that have multiple accounts and want to know which system they're connected into. Similarly to Salesforce, I can do the same thing. I can click into here and see, okay, I'm going to map these pills from TrackVia over into Salesforce. When I add this record for a contact, it's going to add over into Salesforce. I'm gonna hit save on that and start this recipe up again. When I do so, it's gonna take me to the next tab in Workato, which is my jobs tab. On the jobs tab, I can see all the jobs that have run for this integration, and I can troubleshoot any that may have had errors. So if there were any errors, I could click into the job and actually see what the error handling messages are. Connections is going to tell us which systems are currently connected to this. Version control, I think, is one of the most powerful features of Workato because we can always go back and revert to older versions of our integration. We can have test cases if we want to try out an integration first. And then on settings, we can look at usage metrics and things like that. The real benefit to a system like Workato, in addition to the ease of use of setting up the integrations, is the fact that you get all this additional features with it. The error handling, the version controls, you just don't get that with a traditional API. And with Workato, you can actually start to get some of those things. Now let's quickly run through that example. I'm going to go back to TrackVia, and I'm going to add a new contact. I'm going to add the contact of Gail Withers. And I could add organizations and emails and things like that, but we'll save that for now. I'm gonna hit save within TrackVia on that. That will now add that contact into this record. And then when I go back here, since we have this recipe running, you'll see we had 65 jobs. We now have a 66th job. There's Gail Withers that's now in there. And if I go into my instance of Salesforce, which this is just a Salesforce sandbox I've got set up, if I go to my contacts, we're gonna see Gail Withers is now in there. I could click into this and I can see when she was added, who she was added by. Obviously, we don't have a lot of information in this case, but we can see that I added her just now when we were going through this. So very powerful tool if you want to connect two systems and move data between two systems. This can also go the other way. If I needed to connect Salesforce to TrackVia and push data from Salesforce to TrackVia, you could certainly do that. As I mentioned, we've got about 40% of customers using Workato in some way. The number of connections, I'm not even sure if I could give you a number. I think it's somewhere well above 50 as far as the different types of connectors that are currently being used. So people are really getting a lot of value out of Workato. Jumping back into TrackVia now, there's a couple of other things that I want to cover off on in the next 10 minutes or so. Taylor mentioned application scripts and the power behind application scripts. I found some people don't know where to access application scripts, so we'll walk through that quickly. Application scripts are going to be accessed on the table level. If I go into my projects table and I edit the table, you're going to see that I have application scripts right up here. And if I click into it, here's an example of an application script. You'll see that we also have a lot of coursework around this within TrackVia University. So if you want to learn any more about how to write these, you can certainly access that here. But essentially what this script is telling me to do is when I go to create a project, I've got a few different types of projects. Based on the type of project that I select, I'm going to have a few tasks that are going to be generated. So what it's going to say is because I selected a certain project type, then it's going to auto-generate the tasks below on a child table so I can go and execute those tasks and complete that project. So that covers off on public web forms, integrations with Workato, as well as app scripting. The last couple things I want to show off to you is FormStack, and then we'll cover a little bit of where to find the SSO, as well as sandbox environments for anyone interested in that. When it comes to FormStack, we have a lot of customers taking advantage of the FormStack platform. Essentially what FormStack does for us is it allows us to take any form within TrackVia and let you pull the data out of it to generate a PDF. This can be used for POs, it can be used for invoices, it can be used for email letters, whatever the case may be, where you need to generate that sort of nice looking PDF or email or Word doc that goes out to maybe a client, maybe a vendor, or someone like that. Once you have that set up between TrackVia, FormStack, and Workato, what you can do is start to fill in information on anything in TrackVia and generate a PDF out of that. So for example, I'm gonna do some invoicing here. I've got a basic invoice form here that I can start to fill in. What's the invoice date? What's the due date for it? What department is it gonna be in? What's the invoice number? And then what's the amount? Let's say it's $20,000. I'll hit save on that. And what's going to happen is that is going to generate that invoice within TrackVia for me. But behind the scenes, using Workato and using FormStack, it's going to start to generate a document here. Now that document's not here right now. It'll take a couple of seconds. But if I click into one of these older ones, I can see what that will look like. Now I've got a very basic document here that's just going to grab all that information that we put within TrackVia and put it into a PDF here. But you could certainly get down to line iteming out these items, having a more robust looking PO, having a more robust looking invoice that calls out the company, calls out your contacts. Again, whatever level of detail you need to get to, you can generate within FormStack to ultimately send out to your clients. You can also email these directly from FormStack. So as it gets generated in TrackVia, we keep that record there, but then based on someone's email that's in TrackVia, we send that invoice directly to that person or that PO directly to that person. So very powerful tool for the right use case. The last couple things to cover off on, SSO and sandboxes. For anyone that is interested in utilizing SSO, once we get that turned on for you, you would be able to go to your account settings here, where you can see that I've got everything turned on. And if you have SSO turned on, you'd have the ability to go in and ultimately use single sign-on. Single sign-on will require a subdomain. So if you don't already take advantage of subdomains, you certainly can. If you wanted to actually have, instead of saying go.trackvia.com, it could say gil.trackvia.com, tailor-termintosi.trackvia.com. You can set up the subdomain to be tied into your actual organization. The last thing we'll cover off on for our advanced features is a sandbox feature. Sandboxes are a premium feature within TrackVia. And what a sandbox allows us to do is essentially make an exact copy of the whole account so that we can do testing within it, so that we can build within it and ultimately promote it. Not every sandbox has to be promotable. We can create sandboxes that are non-promotable sandboxes, which means we're just going to test things in there. We're going to build some things, we're going to break some things. We don't have to worry about it messing with our production environment. And then we can also make promotable sandboxes, which is where we're going to say, we're going to lock down our production environment and we're going to go build some things. Maybe it's forms, maybe it's views, maybe we're going to build an entirely new application and then push all of those changes into production so that we can then work with our new application. Another advantage of sandboxes is as an admin, I can enter this sandbox as any of my users. So if I have a user that's having trouble with something in TrackVia and I can't see what they're looking at because of the way our roles and permissions might be set up, I can essentially select the person that I want to go in as and go into the sandbox as that person. I'm going to go ahead and launch a sandbox just so you all see what that process looks like. And essentially what's happened is I've already pre-set up this sandbox, so it didn't take very long, but I now have an exact replica of my entire demo environment here with all the applications, all the forms, all the fields, all the data in here. Obviously it says sandbox up on the top here so that I know I'm not working in production, but now I can go and play around in this. I can break things, I can make adjustments to the dashboards, I can remove applications if I want to, and it will not affect my production environment. In my case, this is a non-promotable sandbox, so any changes I make, I would have to go make separately in production, but I can also make that a promotable sandbox again, make the changes, and then push them to production. So a great developer environment if you want to get in and play around and test things out without putting any risk to your production environment. We've got about 5 minutes left here, and there are a couple of questions in the chat. I don't know that we'll get to all of those questions, but any questions that we don't get to, we'll be sure to follow up with the folks who asked those afterwards. One thing that I do want to make sure that we wrap up with for everyone is that we do have some end-of-year promotions going on specific to a lot of these advanced features. So things like Workato, things like Sandbox, some of those things that generally we do charge a premium for because they are premium features, we have some discounting going on right now that runs until essentially the end of the year. So if you've ever had questions, if you've ever thought about wanting to add these things to your account, certainly reach out to your account manager. If you don't know who your account manager is, I've listed Taylor and I's emails here on the page as well. So if you want to just reach out directly to us, we can, of course, point you in the right direction as well. Taylor, anything else that you wanted to wrap with here in the last 5 minutes or so?
No, just some teasers really. We have a feature coming out for Sandbox access before the year is over. Please read our release notes. That's a great thing to subscribe to. And we are also finalizing some themes for what we plan on doing next year. The two themes that I can share now are productivity and collaboration. What fills in those buckets is really being finalized in the last month that we have here. And we will continue to target to specific customers on feedback that we need, similar to our public web forms beta program. Who can we interview and talk to and get inside the minds of to understand what features you need TrackVia to provide to make your experience better, more seamless, and leaning into those two categories I mentioned. So big changes coming next year. We've completely revamped a lot of things internally, and this list should be getting longer every year of the premium things that we can do, or just the advanced features as well.
Definitely. Yeah. Awesome. With that being said, I think we'd like to obviously thank everyone for attending. I'm looking at all the questions here. There's a lot of great ones that we'll be sure to answer individually for the folks that sent those out. So be on the lookout for that. We will also send a short survey to everybody who attended. If you don't mind filling that out, helps us make these webinars better for you in the future. Outside of that, again, if you have any other questions, don't hesitate to reach out to your account manager, your CSM, or myself or Taylor. Always happy to help as well. And thanks everyone again for attending.
Happy holidays, everyone.